William Wordsworth was born in 1770 and died in 1850. Developing the empirical or rationalistic methodologies of the previous century, the 19th century thinker believed that the truth could be attained by tapping into the core of our humanity or transcendental natures, best sought in our original or natural setting, and that radical changes found their spokesperson in William Wordsworth, who is born in Cockermouth, Cumberlandshire, and he was raised in Lake District of England. In 1791, he completed his formal education at St. John's College, Cambridge. So after he completed his grand tour of the continent, he was able to publish descriptive sketches, which was written on 1793, where he met his admirers and soon-to-be friend and co-author, namely Samuel T. Coleridge. Together, they published the poem Lyrical Ballads, which was written in 1798. It is a collection of poems that heralded the beginning of British Romanticism. He wrote his best poetry that includes poems in 2 volumes, 1807, The Excursion, which was written on 1814, Miscellaneous Poems, 1815, and The Prelude, which was written in 1850. But still, it is the lyrical ballads that ushers in the Romantic age in English literature and shifts the focus of both literary theory and criticism. In his purpose, he notes to choose incidents and situations from common life and describe them in a language really used by people and situations, the manner in which we associate ideas in a state of excitement. So instead of using kings, queens, and aristocrats as the element and subject matter in his poetry, he used common men and women. So the reason behind it is that the reason behind it is that poets like him finds their essential passion as their subjects speak in a plainer and more emphatic language. He also made dramatical shifts in the focus of poetry's proper language, and he rather choose a language that is being used by everyone or by a common person. It is like a speech that was not inflated poetic diction of couplets, complicated rhyme schemes, and dense figures of speech. Wordsworth spent the winter of 1798 to 1799 in Germany with Dorothy. It is where he endured the most intense isolation he had ever encountered in the remote town of Goslar, Saxony. As a result, he wrote some of his most moving poems, including the elegies Lucy and Matthew. As well as early drafts of the Prelude, he added several new poems to the second edition of Lyrical Ballads on 1800s after his return to England, including 2 tragic pastorals of country life, The Brothers and Michael. So he also composed the brilliant lyrics that were collected in his second verse collection, Poems in 2 volumes, which was written in 1807, including the enduringly popular I Wandered Lonely as a Cloud, which was also known as Daffodils around this time. From his meeting with Coleridge in 1797 to 1808, all of these poems make up what is now known as his Great Decade. So in order to reshape the focus of his poetry subject and language, he redefines the poetry itself. Wordsworth defines poetry as the spontaneous overflow of powerful feelings, taking its origin from emotion recollected in tranquility. Wordsworth's poet has acquired a greater readiness and authority in expressing what he feels and believes, especially those thoughts and feelings which emerge in him without immediate excitement by his own choice or from the structure of his own mind. His new type of poet creates a poem by internalizing a scene, situation, or event and recalling it along with the feelings that it evokes at a later time when the artist can put the memory into words. He writes near the end of the preface to the lyrical ballads, "I have one request to make of my reader, which is that in judging these poems, he would decide by his own feelings, genuinely, and not by reflection on what will probably the judgment of others." He also drawn away from the mimetic and rhetorical theories of criticism of previous centuries and toward a new development in literary theory, the expressive school, which emphasizes the artist's individuality and the reader's privilege to share in that individuality. He lays the groundwork for English Romanticism and broadens the scope of literary criticism and theory for both 19th and 20th century as a result of this. Let us now move on to Percy B. Shelley, who was born on 1792 and died in 1822. He is one of the strongest and most vocal voices of British Romanticism. He was born in Sussex, England in 1792. He was enrolled in Oxford University and found companionship with Thomas Jefferson Hogg, who was born on 1792 and died on 1862. Shelley was not an atheist, but he fought for the right to debate Christianity's belief. He values the individual and the imagination, and he believes that philosophy and history are derived from poetry, with poetry taking precedence over these disciplines. So despite Shelley's troubled relationship with Harriet, the young couple had 2 children together. Elizabeth Blunt, Shelley's niece, was born in June 1813 when he was 21 years old. Shelley abandoned his wife and promptly took up with another young woman before their second child was born. Mary, the daughter of Shelley's beloved mentor Godwin, and Mary Wollstonecraft, the celebrated feminist author of A Vindication of the Rights of Women, was his new love interest. She was well educated and precocious. Godwin, to Shelley's surprise, was opposed to Shelley dating his daughter. So despite of having a happy marriage and even followed by a variety of other events that seemed disgraceful by Britain's citizenry, he still produced some of the best-known romantic poems like Ozymandias, which was written in 1817, Ode to the West Wind, written on 1819, Adonais, which was written on 1821, and A Defense of Poetry, written also in the same year. By far, Shelley is Plato's most ardent admirer. He combines Plato's concept of spiritual reality with his own, claiming that poetry is by far the most effective means of gaining access to the forms and ultimate truth. he argues that poetry is the source of philosophy and history, and poetry has a higher status than these disciplines. For him, nothing is more holy and perfect than poetry. The poet, according to Shelley's creative theory, is the best of all the different types of artists because only the poet can see the future and the present. And as he puts it, participates in the eternal, the infinite, and the one, becoming more than just an ordinary person. So, according to him, creative theory, only the poet can see the future and the present. Participates in the eternal, infinite, and one. So just like I've said earlier, becoming something more than a regular person. His admiration for poets and poetry as well as their role in the world as teachers and prophets who can lead us to ultimate truth, reflects a paradigm shift in thought from neoclassicism to British Romanticism, a new direction in literary criticism that has deeply influenced literary theory and criticism to this day.